7 weeks. That is how long the football world has been holding its breath. 7 weeks since the final whistle blew in New Jersey, and the biggest match on earth turned into something nobody watching will ever be able to unsee. 7 weeks of statements, of leaked reports, of federations lawyering up, of pundits arguing about whether FIFA would actually do anything at all, or quietly let it die the way these things usually die. Well, it's over. The verdict has landed, and I have genuinely sat here reading it 3 times, trying to work out whether I'm relieved that something finally happened or furious that this is all it amounts to. Because there are real bans in here, there are numbers that will end careers, and there is one punishment so absurd that when I read it out loud in a moment, you are going to think I've made a mistake. Stay with me, because every single line of this document matters. And if this is the kind of breakdown you want more of, subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it genuinely keeps this channel alive. Let's go through them one by one, and I'm saving Leandro Paredes for last, because his section deserves its own chapter. Nahuel Molina, 7 matches, a $90,000 fine on top. And I want people to understand something that has been lost in all the noise of the last 7 weeks. Molina started this. Everybody talks about Paredes, and we'll get there, but the first punch of the entire incident came from Molina. Rodri, the captain of Spain, a Ballon d'Or winner, a man who had just lifted the World Cup, was running to celebrate with his own teammates. That's it. That's all he was doing. And Molina struck him in the stomach and then got directly in his face. 2 separate offenses against the same player inside the same few seconds. 7 matches. And here's the detail that makes it land differently. Molina plays for Atletico Madrid, in a city that had spent an entire week celebrating a World Cup won by the man he punched. Whatever that preseason was going to be, it just became something far more uncomfortable. Roberto Ayala. 3-match touchline ban and a $30,000 fine. Now think about the job description here. Ayala is an assistant coach. His entire professional function in that moment was to be the adult, to pull players away, to lower the temperature. Instead, after the final whistle, he walked onto the pitch and struck Dani Olmo. And then came the apology, where he described it as more of a push than a punch. And Olmo, the man who was actually hit, publicly and on the record called that a lie. 3 matches from the touchline for the coach who was supposed to prevent precisely this. Thiago Almada. 1 match, $30,000. Involvement in the general disorder, a lighter sanction, but confirmed. Another Argentina player formally found guilty. And then we get to the one that made me put my phone down and stare at the wall. Gavi, 1 match, $30,000. Gavi, the player who was grabbed by the throat, who was wrestled to the ground, who was held by the collar and shoved in the face while he was already lying on the floor. Banned. For reacting to being assaulted. 1 match for the victim, and $30,000 out of his account for the crime of defending his teammates. And then FIFA managed to make it worse, because Gavi's single-match suspension applies to a Nations League fixture, Spain against England, at Wembley, September the 26th, one of the most anticipated international nights of the entire calendar. Gavi will not be on that pitch because somebody put their hands around his neck. Read that again. The man who was choked misses Wembley. The man who choked him gets a suspension he might have served anyway. Which brings us to Leandro Paredes. This is a man who produced, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, the single worst conduct ever seen from a professional player at a World Cup final. Not a preseason friendly, not a bad-tempered league game in November, a World Cup final, watched by billions of people, the most visible 30 seconds of football that exist. He put Eric Garcia in a chokehold. He wrestled Gavi, a 21-year-old, to the floor. He held him by the collar and shoved him in the face while he was already down. 3 separate acts of violence against 2 different players in under a minute. And then, 48 hours later, an Instagram post about the greatest Argentina squad in history. Not one word about any of it. FIFA found him guilty on all 3 counts. 10 international matches, a $90,000 fine. 10 sounds low. I understand why people are reading that number and feeling deflated. But look at the calendar. Because that is where this punishment becomes something far heavier than it first appears. Between now and the summer of 2027, the international window schedule gives Argentina roughly 10 fixtures. All of them. Every qualifier, every friendly, every squad announcement, every chance to wear that shirt again. Gone. The entire cycle. Paredes is 32 years old, playing at Boca Juniors, in a position that runs on sharpness and legs rather than pure explosiveness. He'd be 33 before he could be considered again, having not touched international football for a full year. Plenty of players have disappeared from a national team for less time and simply never come back. There is a very realistic chance that his Argentina career ended in that tunnel in New Jersey, and he doesn't even know it yet. And his response? A public suggestion that Spanish players received favoritism from officials and from FIFA, from the man who was found guilty of 3 counts of assault. I genuinely have nothing to add to that. Then the federation itself. The AFA hit with a fine of $321,000, covering multiple breaches, team misconduct, non-sporting conduct, discriminatory incidents, security failures, and crowd behavior, plus 1 senior national team fixture, ordered to be played behind closed doors, specifically over the Falklands banner displayed in front of England supporters after the semi-final, and a mandated $100,000 to be spent on anti-discrimination programs. For context, Argentina's World Cup prize money from FIFA was in the region of $34 million. Do that maths yourself. Now the honest part, because I don't want this to just be a victory lap. The Paredes ban is real. It is the most significant individual punishment to come out of this entire tournament, and it will hurt a player who has behaved this way for years without ever facing a genuine consequence. Credit where it's due. But every one of these bans applies only to international football. Club football is completely untouched. Paredes keeps playing at Boca, Molina keeps playing at Atletico. Their weekends do not change at all. And then there's the silence. FIFA confirmed they were reviewing patterns of prior conduct, including previous incidents involving this squad. It's very difficult to see where that review actually lengthened anybody's sentence beyond what the specific charges from the final produced. And Enzo Fernandez, whose past has been documented extensively, including on this channel, received nothing beyond the automatic suspension attached to his red card. No additional sanction, no public explanation. In a verdict full of numbers, that gap is the loudest thing in the entire document. The AFA have already confirmed they intend to appeal, which means the Court of Arbitration for Sport is very likely the next stop, and these figures may not be the final ones. They think it's unfair. Funnily enough, so do I, just not in the same direction. So here's where we stand as of tonight. Paredes loses a year, Molina loses 7 matches, Ayala is off the touchline, the AFA are down over $300,000 and a home crowd. And Gavi will be watching Spain play England at Wembley from a sofa. Now watch what happens next, because the consequences don't stop with the paperwork. Molina walks back into a dressing room and a stadium in the Spanish capital every single week. Rodri and Gavi's Spain will go to Wembley for one of the standout Nations League nights of the season, a man short. Argentina begin an entire international cycle without a player who has been a fixture in that midfield for years, and Lionel Scaloni now has a genuine selection problem to solve. And every single time these federations are drawn against each other from here on, this is the story that gets replayed before kickoff. So tell me your verdict, because I want to read it. Is 10 matches enough for what Paredes did, or should FIFA have taken his international career away permanently? And is anyone going to explain the Gavi decision? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. And if you want the football kits without the ridiculous retail markup, the link at the top of the description has you covered. Subscribe if you haven't. It genuinely means everything.